The morning Brittany Ashcroft-Vaughn hired a bulldozer to tear down an 82-year-old war veteran's fence, she did not know three things. She did not know that fence had been built by his own hands the summer he came home from Vietnam. She did not know his wife's ashes were buried beneath the lilac bush it protected. And she did not know not a single soul on that cul-de-sac knew that the private road her Range Rover was parked on, the road her mailman drove every morning, the road every school bus and moving truck and ambulance in Cedarbrook Estates had used for 26 years. That road belonged to him. And come Tuesday morning, he was going to take it back. Let me tell you about a place called Cedarbrook Estates. 47 houses tucked into the rolling hills just outside Franklin, Tennessee. That's Williamson County, about 20 miles south of Nashville, horse country. The kind of place where the mailboxes are stone-columned and the lawns are cut in diagonal stripes on Saturday mornings. In the summer of 2024, if you'd driven through on a June evening, you'd have heard the hiss of automatic sprinklers and the low hum of a Mercedes pulling into a four-car garage. You'd have smelled fresh-cut fescue and charcoal smoke drifting off a backyard grill. You'd have seen American flags on porch columns and wind chimes, and a golden retriever or two lying on a cool stone walkway. It was the kind of neighborhood that looked like a magazine cover, the kind of place where people said good morning and meant it, the kind of place where nothing ever really happened. Until Brittany moved in. But before we get to hers, before we get to the bulldozer and the badges and the morning that pearl-white Range Rover got towed off of private property in front of 2 news cameras, let me tell you about the man who lived at the end of Old Mill Lane. His name was Raymond Patrick Callahan. Most folks on the block just called him Ray. The older ones called him Sarge. The little girl next door, a freckled 11-year-old named Emma, called him Pop Pop because he was her grandfather and because the world, for her, revolved around the screen door of the small white farmhouse at 1247 Old Mill Road. Master Sergeant Raymond Callahan, United States Army Corps of Engineers, retired. 24 years of service, 1963 through 1987. He'd enlisted at 19 because his father told him a man should know what it meant to carry a weight that didn't belong to him. He'd been shipped to Vietnam in 1966, built pontoon bridges across the Mekong under sniper fire, and come home in the summer of 1968 with a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, and a limp in his right leg that still showed up on cold mornings. He was 82 years old now, tall still, thin at the shoulders, broad at the hands. White hair he cut himself with clippers every second Sunday. A face like weathered oak, lines carved by sun and salt, and the kind of grief a man only earns by outliving the people he loved most. His wife Margaret had died in the spring of 2019, pancreatic cancer. They'd been married 51 years. Ray had scattered most of her ashes over the Smoky Mountains, where they'd honeymooned, but he'd kept a small portion in a hand-thrown ceramic urn and buried it himself at dusk, beneath a lilac bush in the southwest corner of his yard, right up against the old cedar fence he'd built with his own 2 hands in 1970. You could see a single candle in his kitchen window every night at 9. He lit it for Margaret. He hadn't missed a night in 5 years. He lived alone now, but not quite. His daughter Sarah, a court reporter over in Davidson County, came by every Sunday with Emma and a pan of something warm. He kept a workshop out back where he built birdhouses for the kids on the block. He walked the property line every Sunday morning with a hand-carved walking stick made of white oak, checking the fence posts, the way his father had taught him. He wore the same thing most days: Wrangler jeans, a faded canvas work shirt, brown leather boots that were older than some of his neighbors, and on a chain around his neck under the shirt, 2 dog tags and a small silver St. Christopher medallion Margaret had given him the day he shipped out. He was a quiet man, the kind of quiet that some people mistake for weakness. Some people, as you will see, are very, very wrong. The Vaughns moved into 1251 Old Mill Road, the lot right next to Ray's, in the spring of 2022. The moving truck was a 26-footer from a white glove service out of Brentwood, 2 pearl-white Range Rover Sports in the driveway, a Tesla Cybertruck parked on the street, 2 landscaping crews, a custom mailbox with a gold monogram, AV, in a serif font the size of a man's hand. Brittany Ashcroft-Vaughn was 38 years old that summer. Blonde, bottle-tan, gym-toned. She had a doctorate in something called brand strategy from an online university and a lifestyle Instagram account with 41,000 followers. Her husband, Chad Vaughn, was 42. commercial real estate developer, or more accurately, the son-in-law of one. His father-in-law, a man named Preston Ashcroft, had built the original Cedarbrook Estates subdivision back in 1998. Chad had married into the money. He hadn't built a thing. Brittany ran that neighborhood the way a substitute teacher runs a third-grade classroom on the last day before Christmas break. She elected herself HOA president in the spring of 2023, ran unopposed, and sent out her first newsletter on pink letterhead. It contained 17 new rules, including one that banned pickup trucks from being parked in driveways visible from the street. Ray drove a 1994 Ford F-150. It was the same truck he'd bought the month Sarah was born. He kept it washed. He kept it running. It ran. The first time Brittany saw Ray, she was standing in her front yard with a Stanley tumbler of iced oat milk latte, watching her landscaper lay sod. Ray walked over, polite, hat in hand, and introduced himself. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said. "If you ever need a cup of sugar or a jumper cable, I'm right next door." She looked him up and down. She looked at the faded American flag on his porch, the one that had been there in that same bracket since 1989. She looked at the old F-150. She smiled, tight and thin, like somebody had stapled the corners of her mouth. "That's so sweet of you," she said. "Listen, I don't mean to be that neighbor, but is there any chance you could swap out that flag? It's really," she wrinkled her nose, "tired looking. It's pulling down the whole aesthetic of the block." Ray looked at her for a long second, then he looked at the flag. "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "I reckon I'll keep it up a while longer." And he tipped his hat and walked home. That flag had flown over his brother's coffin in 1969, but he didn't tell her that. He didn't figure it was any of her business. It wouldn't be the last time she underestimated that old man. 3 weeks later, Ray came home from the hardware store to find a pink envelope taped to his front door. HOA violation notice 1. Fine, $50. Reason, unsightly flag display, faded fabric, rusted bracket, inconsistent with community aesthetic standards as defined in Bylaw 17B, subsection 3. Ray read it twice. He set his hardware bag down on the porch. He walked across the lawn in no particular hurry and crossed the stone path that separated his yard from Brittany's. He knocked on her front door 3 times, polite. Brittany opened it a crack, wearing yoga pants and holding her phone. The blue light of a ring light flickered behind her. She'd been recording a video about, and I am not making this up, setting boundaries with difficult neighbors. "Ma'am," Ray said, and he held up the notice. "I think there may have been a misunderstanding. That flag's been up since 1989. I've maintained it. The only thing faded on it is the blue, and that's because sunlight does that. It's not unsightly, it's just old like me." He tried to smile. She did not. "Listen, Grandpa," she said, and the word came out of her mouth like she was spitting a watermelon seed. "I don't know how you lived before I got here, but things are changing in this neighborhood. If you can't maintain your property to community standards, maybe it's time to consider one of those nice retirement villages over in Brentwood. You know, where they take care of people like you." And she shut the door in his face. Ray stood on her porch for a long moment. He didn't say anything. He didn't knock again. He just folded the pink notice into a neat square, slipped it into the breast pocket of his canvas shirt, and walked home. He sat on his porch for a long time that afternoon. Just him and the candle in the kitchen window, just him and the lilac bush by the fence. Now let me pause here and ask you something, folks. Have you ever tried to be reasonable, truly reasonable, with somebody who has no interest whatsoever in being reasonable? Somebody who looks at your gray hair or your uniform or your quiet manner and decides right then and there that you're prey. If you've ever been treated that way, if somebody ever looked at your kindness and saw a weakness, I want you to drop a comment below and tell me about it, because I want you to know something. You are not alone, and what's coming in this story you're going to love. Back to Ray. That night, he opened the small oak desk in the corner of his living room. It had belonged to his father, and he took out a blue spiral-bound notebook, the kind a school kid might use. On the first page, in his careful Corps of Engineers handwriting, he wrote, June 14, 2024, HOA fine 1, $50, flag, spoke TO subject, no resolution. He closed the notebook, he put it back in the drawer. And at the back of that same drawer, beneath 3 decades of tax returns and Margaret's old letters, sat a stack of yellowed documents tied with butcher's twine, land deeds, survey maps, and a lease agreement, all bearing the signature of a man named Patrick Callahan, dated 1957. But we'll come back to those. The fines started coming every week. HOA violation notice 2, mailbox paint weathered, $75. Notice 3, grass 1/2 inch over the permitted height, $100. Notice 4, workshop shed visually incompatible with community design guidelines, $200. Notice 5, pickup truck parked in driveway more than 12 hours, $250. Ray wrote every one of them down in the blue notebook. Date, time, amount. He photographed each pink envelope. He taped the originals into a manila folder he labeled in block letters CEDARBROOK records. Then the smaller things started. A pizza box thrown over his fence Monday morning. A bag of dog waste tossed into his lilac bush on a Wednesday afternoon. Chad Vaughn's Cybertruck parked directly in front of Ray's mailbox 3 days in a row so the postal carrier couldn't deliver. A sheriff's deputy showing up at 10 in the morning because somebody, anonymously of course, had called to complain that Ray's lawnmower engine was disturbing the peace. Deputy was embarrassed, apologized, left. Ray wrote it all down. Then one morning in late July, he came out to find somebody had spray-painted 2 words on the side of his white mailbox in jagged red letters. Old fart. Ray stared at it. He took a photograph. He painted over it the same afternoon with a fresh coat of white enamel. That night, he ordered 5 4K outdoor security cameras from a company up in Knoxville. He mounted them himself at 4 different corners of the house and 1 on the workshop. The footage backed up to a cloud server and a hard drive in the workshop and a second hard drive at his daughter Sarah's apartment in Nashville. He didn't say a word to anybody, he just started recording. Here's what nobody knew at the time. Ray Callahan had been a master sergeant in the Army Corps of Engineers. He had spent 24 years of his life documenting things, surveys, bridge specs, after-action reports. He had testified in uniform in front of 3 congressional inquiries about infrastructure in Southeast Asia. He knew, better than almost any lawyer in the state of Tennessee, how to build a paper trail. And Brittany Ashcroft-Vaughn was building it for him, 1 pink envelope at a time. Meanwhile, across the fence, Brittany was posting on her lifestyle Instagram, renovation posts, neighborhood goals posts. One post in early August showed a drone shot of her backyard pool, her new hot tub, and visible in the far corner of the frame, the top of Ray's cedar fence. The caption read, "Almost perfect, just need to deal with the eyesore on the property line. Stay tuned, babes." She tagged a demolition company in the post. Ray saw it because his granddaughter Emma showed it to him on a Sunday afternoon. Ray didn't have Instagram, he had a flip phone. He looked at the picture on Emma's iPad for a long time. Pop, Emma said, "What's she gonna do?" Ray set the iPad down, he pulled his granddaughter into a hug, he kissed the top of her head. "Nothing, sweetheart," he said softly, "she ain't gonna do nothing." And in his head, very quietly, he began to count. It was a Saturday in early September, 2024. Ray had taken Emma up to Nashville for the weekend, the Country Music Hall of Fame, dinner at the Loveless Cafe, a Sunday matinee. Sarah was coming along, 3 days of grandfather joy. He left Friday evening. He asked his neighbor across the street, an old retired firefighter named Hank Briggs, to keep an eye on the house. He did not take the cameras down. Monday morning, Ray's F-150 turned onto Old Mill Lane at 10 past 11. The truck slowed. Then it stopped. Ray sat behind the wheel for a long moment. The engine idled. A mockingbird called somewhere in the pine trees. The radio was playing Merle Haggard. Ray had been humming along on the drive home. He didn't hum now. Where his cedar fence had stood for 54 years, the fence he had built in the summer of 1970, the summer Sarah was born, the summer he had finally started to feel like the war was over, there was nothing. A scar of torn dirt, splintered cedar, the hot, raw smell of fresh-cut wood. The lilac bush was crushed flat. The ceramic urn beneath it, the one that held a handful of Margaret's ashes, was shattered. White ceramic shards lay scattered across the dirt like fallen snow. The workshop gate, the small wooden one he had carved CALLAHAN 1970 into with a pocket knife on Margaret's birthday, was cracked down the middle. And on his front porch, taped to his door, was another pink envelope. HOA courtesy notice, non-compliant boundary structure removed at HOA expense. $0 fine, consider this a favor. Ray got out of the truck, slow. He was 82, he still moved like he was carrying a rifle. He walked to the destroyed fence line, he knelt down, knees popped. He reached through the dirt with his right hand and picked up a single shard of that ceramic urn. He turned it over in his palm. Then he stood up. He did not yell, he did not curse, he did not throw anything. He pulled his flip phone out of his breast pocket and he took 127 photographs. Every angle, every splinter, the tire tracks of the bulldozer in his lawn, the fresh paint of a demolition logo on a corner of wood, Metro Demolition LLC, Franklin TN. Then he walked across the lawn to Brittany's porch. She was waiting. She opened her front door before he even raised his hand. She was wearing a white tennis skirt and a satisfied smile. "Before you say anything," she said, "that fence was way over the property line. I had my surveyor confirm it. You're welcome. Honestly, I saved you a lawsuit." Ray looked at her. He did not say a single word. He just nodded, one slow, deliberate nod, turned around, walked back across his lawn, climbed the steps to his porch, went inside and closed the door. The lock clicked. Brittany watched him go and she laughed. She actually laughed, a short, sharp, delighted little laugh like a woman who had just won. Folks, let me pause right here. If you think Ray Callahan is going to let this go, if you think an 82-year-old Vietnam veteran, a man who built pontoon bridges under sniper fire in the Mekong Delta, a man whose wife's ashes were just scattered across his own backyard by a woman in a tennis skirt, if you think he's gonna let that slide, then you, my friend, have never in your life met a man like Ray Callahan. Because what happened next? Nobody in Cedarbrook Estates saw it coming. Here is what Brittany Ashcroft-Vaughn did not know that Monday afternoon. She did not know that in 1957, a Kentucky farmer named Patrick Callahan, Ray's father, had used the settlement money from a coal mining accident to buy 340 acres of rolling Tennessee farmland just south of Franklin. She did not know that Patrick had held that land, and his son Ray had inherited it, and the Callahan Family Trust had held it ever since. She did not know that in 1998 her own father-in-law, Preston Ashcroft, had come to Ray Callahan with a proposal. He wanted to build a subdivision, 47 luxury lots on 112 acres of adjacent land. But there was a problem. The only viable access to the county highway ran across a narrow strip of Callahan land, Old Mill Lane. Ray had leased Preston the road, 25 years, $200 a month, a handshake and a piece of paper notarized at a Franklin bank. Preston had been grateful. Preston had said, "Ray, if this thing ever gets successful, I'll renegotiate. I'll make it right." The lease expired in June of 2023. Preston had died of a heart attack in 2021. His son-in-law Chad, who had inherited control of the development company, had never gotten around to renewing it. He had never even read it. Ray had let it ride. He was a neighborly man. He didn't need the $200. She did not know that Ray Callahan's best friend from the Corps of Engineers, his battle buddy, his best man, the godfather of his daughter, was a man named Colonel Edward Eddie Thornton, retired, who was now the senior partner at Thornton, Hayes & Prescott, the largest property litigation firm in Nashville. She did not know that Eddie's son, Marcus Thornton, was a deputy district attorney for Williamson County. She did not know that Ray's daughter, Sarah Callahan, was a licensed court reporter who had 26 years of contacts in the Nashville legal community and a Rolodex that included 3 local news producers. And she absolutely did not know about the cameras. Ray Callahan had 18 months of 4K video footage. Every fine, every pizza box over the fence, every time Chad parked his Cybertruck in front of the mailbox, the sheriff's deputy arriving for the fake noise complaint, the spray paint on the mailbox, and who had done it at 2:14 in the morning on July 31st on camera in crisp high-definition color. And the bulldozer? Oh, the bulldozer. Ray had that on 4 cameras from 4 angles, 11 minutes of uninterrupted footage, including the moment Brittany herself had walked onto Ray's property, pointed at the lilac bush, and said clearly into the audio, "Just level the whole thing. I don't care what he planted. Level it." Ray did not call the sheriff, not yet. He did not call a lawyer, not yet. He did not even tell his daughter. He sat in his living room that Monday evening. He made a cup of black coffee. He lit Margaret's candle. Then he walked to the old oak desk in the corner, and he opened the bottom drawer, and he pulled out the stack of yellowed documents tied with butcher's twine. He untied them, he laid them flat on the table, he put on his reading glasses. He found the 1998 lease. He read it 3 times, slow and careful, the way he used to read after-action reports. Then he picked up the flip phone, and he dialed a number he'd known by heart for 56 years. "Eddie," he said when the voice on the other end picked up. "It's Ray. I need you to come out to the farm on Saturday. Bring a notary and bring your camera." A pause. "Brother," Eddie Thornton said, "what did they do?" Ray looked out the window. The candle flickered in the kitchen. Margaret's lilac bush was gone. "They dug up my wife," he said quietly, and they laughed. On the other end of the line, Eddie Thornton, retired colonel, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, 66 years, a soldier and a lawyer, went very, very quiet. "I'll be there tomorrow," he said. It was a gray Tuesday morning in October 2024. 7:15 in the morning, first real cold snap of the fall, frost on the lawns, the kind of morning where your breath hangs in the air like a ghost, a mockingbird somewhere in the pines. Chad Vaughn was standing in his kitchen in pajama pants and bare feet, watching his espresso machine. Brittany was upstairs on a Peloton, halfway through a 45-minute ride. The Vaughns' 2 children were at a private school in Brentwood that charged $42,000 a year. Chad heard the first vehicle pull onto Old Mill Lane at 7:16. Then the second. Then the third. He walked to the window, coffee in hand. 3 Williamson County Sheriff's cruisers. A white sedan unmarked with a man in a charcoal suit stepping out of the driver's seat. A news van from WSMV Channel 4. A second news van from WKRN Channel 2. A Tennessee Department of Transportation truck, and behind it, a flatbed trailer carrying 6 heavy steel barricades stenciled in yellow paint, "Road closed, private property." And at the end of the caravan, a dark green Chevrolet Suburban. Out of the passenger side stepped an older man, 78, tall, silver-haired, wearing a long wool coat and carrying a leather briefcase. Colonel Edward Thornton, attorney at law. Chad set down his coffee. His hand was shaking. "Britt," he called hoarse, "Britt." Brittany came down the stairs 2 minutes later in workout gear and a full face of makeup, already recording a vertical video on her phone for Instagram stories. She was saying something breezy about morning routines when she stepped out onto the porch and saw what was parked in her driveway. Her phone lowered. The man in the charcoal suit, a process server named Daniel Pruitt, walked up her front path with a manila envelope in each hand. He was polite. He was calm. He had done this 1,000 times. "Mrs. Ashcroft-Vaughn," he said. Yes, her voice came out small. "You are hereby served." He handed her the first envelope. And then the second. And then a third from under his arm. Civil lawsuit Callahan v. Ashcroft-Vaughn et al. Filed in Williamson County Chancery Court. Willful destruction of property, trespass, desecration of human remains, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Paid damages $847,000 plus legal fees plus punitive damages to be determined by the court. Criminal complaint filed with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. Felony vandalism, criminal trespass, abuse of a corpse, a Class E felony in Tennessee on account of the ceramic urn. Temporary restraining order signed by a Chancery Court judge at 4:47 the previous afternoon. Brittany Ashcroft-Vaughn was hereby ordered to stay 500 feet from the Callahan residence at all times. And then, with a small nod, the process server handed her the fourth and final document. It was a cease and desist notice from the Callahan Family Trust. It stated in plain English, on heavy cream paper, under the letterhead of Thornton, Hayes, and Prescott, that the private easement granting the residents of Cedarbrook Estates access to Old Mill Lane had legally expired on June 18, 2023 and had not been renewed, that the Callahan Family Trust was the sole and rightful owner of the roadbed, and that effective 6 o'clock that evening, the road was closed to all non-owner traffic. All 47 homes in Cedarbrook Estates. No access to the highway, no mail delivery, no school buses, no deliveries, no garbage pickup, no ambulance service, nothing. Unless the Cedarbrook Estates Homeowners Association wished to enter into good faith negotiations for a new 25-year easement at fair market value to be determined by an independent appraiser. The Department of Transportation crew was already unloading the barricades. Brittany's mouth opened, no sound came out. Chad came down the porch steps in bare feet, still holding his espresso cup. The cup was trembling so hard the coffee was sloshing onto his wrist. That can't be right, he said. My father-in-law, Preston, that was his road. He built that road. Colonel Thornton stepped forward at his own slow pace. He opened the briefcase on the hood of his Suburban. He pulled out a single document, yellowed paper, butcher's twine. He held it up just high enough to catch the morning sun. Mr. Vaughn, he said, in a voice that had once ordered 3 companies of engineers across a live minefield, your father-in-law signed a 25-year lease with Raymond Callahan on June 18, 1998. That lease expired last year. Neither you nor your HOA nor any resident of this development has any legal claim whatsoever to this road. It is private property. It has always been private property. And as of 6 o'clock this evening, it's closed. Chad Vaughn dropped his espresso cup. It shattered on the driveway. Brittany began to cry. And up the lane, 400 feet away, on a front porch with chipped white paint and an old American flag hanging in its bracket, Ray Callahan sat in a rocking chair, drinking black coffee from a blue tin cup, watching a mockingbird hop along the edge of the birdbath. He did not look down the lane, he did not turn his head. He just rocked and drank his coffee. And beside him in the other rocking chair sat an 11-year-old freckled girl named Emma, wrapped in his old army field jacket, drinking hot chocolate out of a matching blue tin cup. Pop, she whispered. Why? Are you sad? Ray Callahan thought about that for a long moment. He reached over and he took his granddaughter's small hand in his large, weathered one. No, sweetheart, he said, I ain't sad, I'm just tired, it's been a long one. And he took another sip of coffee. By 9 in the morning, every door in Cedarbrook Estates was open. Neighbors on their porches, neighbors in their driveways, neighbors in bathrobes, watching the sheriff's cruisers, watching the news vans, watching the Tennessee Dot crew drive the first steel barricade into the shoulder of Old Mill Lane with a pneumatic hammer. A retired firefighter named Hank Briggs walked across the lane with a thermos of coffee and a plate of his wife's cinnamon rolls. He set them on Ray's porch railing. He didn't say much, he just tipped his cap. Sarja, he said. Hank, Ray said. Hank walked back home. By noon, the Cedarbrook Estates HOA board had called an emergency meeting. By 2:15, Brittany Ashcroft-Vaughn had been unanimously voted out as HOA president. Her replacement, a retired kindergarten teacher named Marcia Dillard, called Colonel Thornton personally at 2:48 to open negotiations on a new easement. By 4 p.m., the news vans had footage of Chad Vaughn, still in pajama pants, being interviewed on his lawn, saying, I had no idea about any of this. This is my father-in-law's mess, not mine. By 6 o'clock, the barricades were in place. Brittany did not come outside again that day. That night, when Ray lit Margaret's candle in the kitchen window, he stood there for a full 5 minutes and watched the flame. Emma was asleep on the couch. Sarah was doing dishes. Mag, he said quietly to nobody, I think we're okay. And outside, through the dark, through the trees, the cul-de-sac was very, very silent. The civil suit settled in February of 2025. Brittany and Chad Vaughn paid $847,000 in compensatory damages. plus $210,000 in legal fees, plus an additional $150,000 to a fund to restore the landscape and replace the cedar fence. The criminal case was pled down. Brittany received 12 months of probation, 120 hours of community service, and a Class A misdemeanor conviction for criminal trespass. The abuse of a corpse charge was dropped in exchange for a written letter of apology to the Callahan family, which Ray read once, folded, and placed in the blue notebook. The Vaughn house at 1251 Old Mill Road was foreclosed on in June of 2025. Chad's development company dissolved 6 months after that. Preston Ashcroft's other heirs sued him for mismanagement. His investors walked. His Cybertruck was repossessed on a Tuesday morning. Brittany's Instagram account went dark in April of 2025, 41,000 followers gone overnight. The last post showed her crying in a bathroom. The caption read simply, "You don't know what you have until it's gone." The comments were not kind. Ray did not read them. The Cedarbrook Estates HOA negotiated a new 25-year easement with the Callahan Family Trust in the spring of 2025. The rate was set by an independent appraiser at 10 times what Preston had paid in 1998, roughly $24,000 a year, split 47 ways, about $43 a month per household, less than a streaming subscription. Ray Callahan did not keep a single penny. Every dollar went to the Wounded Warrior Project in the name of Corporal Daniel Reyes and Private First Class Miguel Alvarez, the 2 men he had lost in the Mekong Delta in the summer of 1967. He had carried their names in his wallet for 57 years. He figured it was time those names did some good. The house at 1251 Old Mill Road was bought in the fall of 2025 by a young couple. He was an Air Force captain just stationed at Arnold in Tullahoma. She was a pediatric nurse. They had a 2-year-old daughter named Hazel. The first Saturday after they moved in, the captain walked over to 1247 with a 6-pack of cold beer and a handshake. He saw Ray's flag. He saw the dog tags hanging from the nail above the workshop door. He set the beer on the porch railing. "Sergeant," he said quietly. "Captain," Ray said. They had a long conversation. Ray built Hazel a dollhouse that winter. And the lilac bush, the one that had been crushed under a bulldozer's tread, did come back. In the spring of 2026, tiny green shoots pushed up from the dirt where Margaret's urn had shattered. By May it was blooming. Ray sat beside it most evenings with a cup of coffee and his old walking stick laid across his knees. He placed a small flat stone at the base of the bush. He carved one word into it with a pocket knife, slow and careful. "Home." You see, folks, there's a lesson in this story, and it's one my own grandfather used to tell me back on the porch of his farm in East Tennessee a long time ago. He used to say that the loudest man in the room is almost never the strongest. He used to say that the man who has nothing to prove is the most dangerous man you will ever meet, because he has already proved it somewhere to someone in a moment you will never see and never understand. And he used to say that patience, real, quiet, long-suffering patience, is not the absence of strength. It's the highest form of it. So tonight, before you go to bed, do me a favor. Think about the old man at the end of your street, the one who doesn't say much, the one who waves from his porch, the one whose flag is a little faded and whose truck is a little old. Ask yourself, what do I really know about him? And if the answer is not much, maybe, just maybe, it's worth walking over tomorrow morning with a cup of coffee and finding out. Because you might be living next door to a hero, and you might never know it. Until the day you need one. Ray Callahan turned 84 years old last summer. He still lives at 1247 Old Mill Road. His granddaughter Emma is 13 now, and she's taller than he is. Margaret's candle still burns in the kitchen window every night at 9. The lilac bush is almost shoulder high. And sometimes, on quiet Sunday mornings, the captain from next door and the old sergeant sit on the porch together and drink coffee and don't say a word for an hour at a time. And somewhere in a small apartment on the other side of Nashville, a woman named Brittany Ashcroft-Vaughn wakes up alone in a 1-bedroom and stares at the ceiling and remembers the day she decided that an 82-year-old man in a faded canvas shirt was somebody she could push. So if this story moved you tonight, folks, if it reminded you of somebody you know or somebody you loved or somebody you should have listened to, hit that like button. Leave a comment, share it with the veteran in your life, and subscribe to the channel, because next week we're telling the story of a Marine in Montana whose HOA tried to fine him for flying the POWMIA flag on Memorial Day. And what he did next changed the entire state. Until then, remember this. Never mistake a quiet man for a weak man. Never mistake patience for permission. And never, ever, ever pick a fight with a veteran who has nothing left to lose but his honor. God bless you, and God bless the men and women who wore the uniform. We'll see you next time.